girls with their nails done now. Girls with their nails done. I like the girls with their nails done. Girls with their nails done. Girls with their nails done now. Girls with their nails done. I like the girls with their nails done. Girls with their nails done.
Well, welcome in, College Football Nation. How about that? Now, Shane, let me ask you a question. You like the girls with their nails done or what?
I do like the girls with their nails done.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joey Foster, and our co-host right over here is Mr. Shane Statmiller. So, Shane, tell me something, man. So, are you ready for Crossover Thursday? Because we've got a great guest in the back room right now that I'm going to bring in here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Penn State-West Virginia rivalry, about the Pitt-Penn State rivalry, and just have some fun.
Right. Let's do it. I'm ready. I'll tell you, I need it. I had one of those days where you drop your sunglasses, my key fobbed to my car, the battery went dead. It's like comes in threes. So I need some good stuff, and I need to hear some fun, entertaining, anecdotal. I need to hear talk about some rivalries, buddy. I need to hear about it.
Well, this is a man that probably knows everything about Penn State that you could imagine. You know, this is all of you will know him from SB Nation platform. He's the writer and editor for Black Shoe Diaries, covering Penn State. Mr. Tim Aiden. Hey, Tim, how you doing, buddy?
Gentlemen, good to be here.
I appreciate you being here with us tonight. You know, the Penn State West Virginia rivalry is not really much of a rivalry, right? I mean, if we look at it on paper, it looks really, really bad because Penn State leads the series 49 wins to 9 wins versus 2 ties. So it looks really lopsided and bad. But here's a cool statistic about this crossover rivalry between West Virginia, Penn State, and Pitt. Penn State is the 7th winningest program in history. West Virginia is the 15th winningest program in history. And Pitt is the 19th winningest program in history. So you have 3 top 20 teams that compete against each other. Penn State might dominate both of them, you know, on the paper. But they're always really good, close games and stuff. But so, Tim, tell us something that I put a little platform over in private chat for us to kind of like look at tonight. And we're going to talk about the storied programs. But tell us a little bit about Penn State's storied program because, I mean, we all know how good they are. But, you know, the whiteout conditions at at Penn State and the atmosphere at Penn State. I mean, I've been to Penn State. It's a rowdy damn place to go and watch a college football game. Matter of fact, last night on our show, I did a little pop-up live. We was rating the top 25 loudest stadiums and best stadiums to go to. I had Penn State at number 2 or 3. I can't remember where I put them. I had LSU number 1.
Yeah.
But Penn State was right there, man. So tell us about it, man. I'm sure you've been to quite a few number of games.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you put Penn State in your top 3 because I saw EA Sports, who's releasing their college football game in a few weeks, which, yes, I have it pre-ordered. I can't wait to start playing it again. I'll feel like I'm back in my college days. But, yeah, I was shocked to see them put Penn State at number 6. Like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Behind, I think they had Ohio Stadium out there. And, I mean, look, no disrespect to Ohio State, but I'm sorry, Ohio Stadium does not quite get as loud as a Beaver Stadium whiteout does. And Kyle Field, like, look, maybe I would put it, you could maybe make an argument for like 5th, perhaps. Say, like, I don't know if you could put that above Penn State, though. Like LSU, yeah, that's fine. I know LSU has actually triggered an earthquake from their fans in the past. So it's, I guess they've registered in the Richter scale. So that I can understand putting them at number 1. But you got to have Penn State at least no lower than 3rd if you're doing it like top 10.
I agree 100%.
Places list. And I think Oregon's Autzen Stadium was completely missing. And that's another you got to be kidding me thing. I mean, Autzen in my top 5.
Rocking. It's rocking.
Yeah, that's going to be not to go off topic, but I mean, I don't know when Penn State's going to play out Oregon, but I feel like that's like Autzen Stadium's like a place I got to put on my bucket list to catch a game at. So.
I got news for Oregon fans. When you guys have to travel to Penn State, you ain't going to know what hit you. Honestly. I mean, you're just not going to know what hit you.
Well, that's unless Fox decides to make it their big noon kick game. And which, I mean, that's probably a whole nother topic I can get into. Do another show on, but
with that being said,
we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
But yeah, so I guess just to give you a background on my where it starts, really. So it starts in the 1991 season. I was 7 years old. I grew up in State College, by the way. So just to give you some context, my dad worked at university, so we and we have family friends. They were already season ticket holders, and they and their kids have been going to games for a long while. And, so a few years after I started watching in 1994, my dad caved and got season tickets in the same area where our friends were sitting. So I definitely, and so from there up until, I think he gave them up last year. So really like from there for 2022, I definitely, I saw my share of Penn State home games from the same spot and saw plenty of future NFL stars, both with Penn State and on opposing Big Ten teams. Like, I mean, just Drew Brees and Tom Brady, just to name a couple future NFLers. Of course, at Penn State, you had Kerry Collins, Kyle Brady, Var Arrington, Larry Johnson. I'd go on, but so many memories and great moments, and also some real heartbreaking moments too. So I guess how we tie that into the Penn State West Virginia rivalry, though, is unfortunately because I started following in 91, that was like the tail end of their independent era. So I do remember we played them a couple times before they, went off the schedule until, this current series. But I guess personally, the one game I do remember, it was 1992. It was in Morgantown. They won 40-26, and it was kind of I actually looked back and watched it on YouTube like earlier this year, and it was in some ways I kind of remembered it being sort of a back and forth type game. I think West Virginia led at one point, and then thanks Jackson. So maybe 2027 I'll hopefully get out to Autzen. But I remember it was kind of a back and forth type game, but then Penn State sort of started to pull away in the fourth quarter and kind of put it out of reach. But West Virginia kept it respectable. Of course, I didn't realize at the time that, we go 30 something years before they play again. But
Right, right, because they played every year for
pretty
it was one
much,
of the longest running rivalries. It was one of the
I'm
longest
looking back
running
at the
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at all the entries here. I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry for the series, and they pretty much played every year dating back to like 1960. No, not before that. Starting from like 1941. Sorry, 1940. They played every single year until Penn State joined the Big Ten in '93. So you're talking, half a century here.
And it's just kind of strange that they joined the Big Ten. That's kind of when West Virginia, they went divergent paths, and then of course Penn State righted the ship, and now is in a direct upward, path, and it seems like WVU kind of went up, came down, and hit a plateau. Those good years in Morgantown, which would be the aughts, and it was dreary and dismal for Penn State fans, right? It was just a tough time to be a fan.
The early part of the first half of the aughts,
Right.
They call it the dark years amongst the fan base. That's 4 losing seasons in 5 years. So like from between 2000 and 2004, we only had one winning season.
Yeah, so I can remember.
Yeah,
I've been a Mountaineer fan since the 70s, early 70s. So I can remember a lot of the rivalry games, right? I can remember 1984. Hell, I was at the game in 1984 when we finally beat Penn State after, my gosh, I don't remember how many years it was. 29 years, I think. I think it was 29
Looks
years.
like, they went 29 years in between.
Yeah.
It was the first time since 1955 they had beaten them. So
Right. So it was like 29 years, and we finally beat you. It was 17-14. We put a big thing up on the scoreboard, said finally, and
I've seen the clip on YouTube.
The one game that really sticks out in my memory, and probably everybody's memory that watched football back then, was the 1988 game. Penn State was ranked 15th in the country. West Virginia was, I think, 8th in the country at the time when you came to Morgantown. And my goodness, I mean, we just laid it to you guys. At the first half, I don't think we played any of the starters much in the second half. It was just absolutely a one-sided game. The first half of that game was. Now you guys, you made it respectable in the end, but now we've had to do that too against you guys many times. It was just one glorious game for us, where you've had many glorious games at Penn State. But so I always enjoyed the game. My first car I ever bought, I'm brand new off the lot. The first brand new car I ever bought, I put a bumper sticker on it that said my 2 favorite teams are West Virginia and whoever beats Penn State. So that was it was a big rivalry back then, just as big as the backyard brawl is with Pitt and West Virginia and things. So talk about your rivalry with Pitt as well, because this is crossover. I want to talk a little bit about rivalry with Pitt. Pitt and Penn State have played historically. I brought it up here. Let me find it here.
100 times.
Yeah. So, Penn State. Oh my goodness, I done lost it now. I've lost the Penn State Pitt rivalry.
I have.
So you might have to help. Oh, okay, good deal. So you might have to help me with that. Oh, okay, here it is. I've got it. Football history. You are Pitt has won 38 times. You've won 41, and you've had 4 ties between the two of you. The last time that you guys played was 2019, and you beat Penn State 17-10. So close game. But then in 2018, you beat them 51-6. So they've got 3 losses in a row to you, and then they had 2 wins in a row from 2000 and 2016. They had 2 wins, but then they've lost the last 3 to you. You guys aren't playing this year, but that's got to be one of the biggest rivalries there is, especially in the state of Pennsylvania. Just everybody's tuning into that game. Remember, right?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I know the slogan for Penn State football is unrivaled, and there's definitely some truth to that, especially being the Big Ten. I mean, I know Penn State fans will clamor about how much they dislike Ohio State and Michigan, but those schools don't really see Penn State as a rival the same way maybe Penn State fans might treat them. It's kind of like with, how Maryland and Rutgers fans are trying to make Penn State a rivalry when they first joined the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And it's just like, sorry guys, you're not our rivals. And that's kind of Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State fans feel about us. I mean, they care more about each other than they do us. So, I mean, if there's any rivalry I'd say we have, it's with Pitt. And because that's historically, that's been less one-sided. I mean, if you go back to, I'm just pulling
the 80s. The 80s were see, I grew up in the 80s watching the tail end of Tony Dorsett, and the Pitt Panthers were still a relevant program. I grew up in Indiana, PA, and it's between Penn State and Pitt. So half of the people that lived around you were Pitt fans, the other half were Penn State fans, and that's just the way it was. So it was a big deal, and the reason it was a big deal is recruiting. Recruiting, the hotbed of Western Pennsylvania, was determined during that weekend on the field. And Joe Paterno was going to get a crack at these high school guys because they put it on Pitt, or vice versa. If Majors got his way, and he would get some good recruits. I don't know so much now with the NIL, but still in our memory banks, because memories are usually 20 to 40 years, chunks, but that's what stirs that emotion for me is, man, this program's going to get one up if they put a W up. But
yeah, unfortunately that was a little before I was born in 84, but I've definitely watched some old games on on YouTube and stuff, and read up on and I know I could say probably from the mid 70s through most of the 80s. I mean, that was like a fierce rivalry, like you said, and those two schools just battling it out for the top recruits in the state, and bragging rights on Thanksgiving weekend type of game. It's similar to like what Michigan and Ohio State go through, if you want a Big Ten comparison. But then when I started following Penn State, like in the early 90s, I mean, Pitt had tailed off at that point, and they were just like, I just remember them being like this bad team that we used to just beat up on at the end of the year.
That's the way it was for us in Morgantown in the 90s, and like all except for 07. But I mean, it was just like, you're gonna go to the Pitt West Virginia game? No, I'm gonna stay in the parking lot and drink, because it was it was a layup.
Yeah. Yeah, except for 07. We won't talk about that game. That's a game that will not be mentioned again.
Yeah, I don't blame you guys. I can.
Yeah, that was just a disastrous game. So I think your slogan or whatever of unrivaled, right? There's absolutely no rivalries in Penn State thing, but I think that goes back to Joe Paul. I mean, Joe Paul came to Penn State in like 1969, right? And you've had the traditional uniform.
Actually, he came in 1950 as an assistant under Rip Engel, who was the head coach at the time. And then in 1966, after Engel retired, he got promoted to head coach. So
66. Okay. Sorry. But now Joe Paul, he was a traditionalist. He liked the plain uniforms, no names on the back.
Black shoes.
That plays into the unrivaled, right? It's like you don't look at anybody any different. Every team's the same, and you better play to the top of your level. And that was Joe Paul's, right? That was his motto. You played at the top level.
I was saying in press conferences, he would always, doesn't matter how good or bad the opponent was, he would always talk them up during the week. Like, this is a good team. Yep. We gotta, we gotta show up and play, or basically type of talk. So.
Yeah, I mean, you play in Middle Tennessee State, and he's sitting there talking about how good their cornerback is, and how we're gonna struggle to throw the ball or whatever. I mean, that was just Joe Paterno's way. And one of the best coaches in history of college football, if you ask me. I know at the end it went out on a sour note. Tell me tell me about your thoughts when all that went down, and the transition now to, hey, you're back on top of college football, right? You're back in the top 10 on a consistent level, but there was a struggle there for a little bit at Penn State, was there not?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to touch upon, how much or whether he deserved any blame for what went down there at the end, but I'll just say personally, just as a state college native, as someone who went to Penn State, it was surreal. It was kind of like seeing like my childhood, like my whole like world kind of crashing down in a way,
Yeah.
especially to get the national news media sitting there camping out on campus, asking students what their opinion is on all this, or they're camping out at the local courthouse, which is just this town called Bellefonte, which is just outside of State College, but
Yeah,
it's
Bellefonte.
really hard to get all those media vans that are all coming down there at once. And but it was really surreal. And then of course, what happened? They hired Bill O'Brien, and I was skeptical at first, but then I think he won me over pretty quickly at the press conference. And I remember when he said he was going to keep Larry Johnson Sr. on staff as defensive line coach, and Larry Johnson was also probably our best recruiter at the time too.
Yeah.
So when he did that, I mean, I think it gave me a sense of, okay, I think this guy gets it. This guy knows what he's doing. Because my fear was, I knew he had come from the New England Patriots, and my fear was this was going to be like Charlie Weiss part 2 or something, like just, full of himself, thinking that because he called the shots and under Bill Belichick that, he can just go be a success anywhere else. So things seem to be going well. And then of course, sanctions hit, and then there's that whole chaos, and then, then Michael Motti and comes out and gives this rousing, like impromptu speech in front of the media, telling them, we're not going anywhere. We're proud of who we are. And then it's that whole 2012 season, the 0-2 start, losing to Ohio in the home opener, and then losing to Virginia, like because our kicker missed a bunch of bunny field goals and an extra point, including a potential game-winning field goal. And then it's wondering, like, what the heck is going on here? And then they start to get it together. They go on this tear, and they end up they finish the season with a nice upset win in overtime over Wisconsin. And
yeah, remember that.
And Bill O'Brien kind of inadvertently drops the F-bomb in a emotional like post-game speech on ESPN, just trying to call his team a bunch of fighters. That became like a fighting kind of became like a
well, he won me over with that, Tim, because here's the thing, because I grew up going to Penn State games, going Notre Dame, Penn State, when they played up there, we always went up, so I literally was accepted, was going to go to Penn State, end up going to WVU. It just happened that way, but I was a Penn State fan more than a Pitt fan. But the thing of it is, watching Penn State during that time as a West Virginia grad, I was like, at first I was like, this is horrible. It's like a train wreck. And you didn't take joy in what happened, but you're like, oh, this is terrible. But there was a point where it was like watching Joe Paterno was like watching a lion on a National Geographic special that you really just felt bad for. Like it was once majestic and now it had no teeth, and you just didn't know how to feel, because Joe Paterno, I remember going to a game in '94 because John Carter made he made a great catch on like a wheel route, broke a tackle, just plowed over a cornerback, boom, just 25 yards. Safety caught him, but he made a big play. And
that was the first year when we had season tickets, Shane. So
yeah.
I was spoiled.
So Kajana Carter made that play. And you know what the fans were saying, Tim? The fans were like, "Did you see that call Joe Pa made on that wheel route?" No. That's the way Penn State fans are. They think Joe Paterno was the puppet master, gave no credit to the players, and that goes back to the names not being
or
on
to the
jersey.
offensive coordinator, Frank Gamer.
It was the team. Yeah, it was Joe Pa. Joe Pa. You know, you go to buy a Coke. There's a cardboard cutout of Joe Pa. It's not, it's Todd Blackledge or anybody, that you would know. It's Joe Pa. So the fact that he was an icon and he wrote handwritten notes to people that would send him stuff. And that sincerity, I honestly, as a retired Army officer where my job was to kind of read a room, I can tell you, I don't think he knew exactly what was going on. Like, he didn't wrap his head around it. It was a naivety. That was his weakness. So that, that's my spiel on Joe Pa. Love him, hate him, I respect him.
I do too. I respect him 100%. I mean, there's nobody comes into college football and just dominates like a Nick Saban or Joe Paterno did, right? You think about it. There's probably never going to be another Joe Paterno. There'll probably never be another Nick Saban in college football. But Joe Paterno was so special because he did it on such a huge scale, on such a, I mean, for so many years. What'd you say, 66 he came? I said 69, you said 66. So he becomes head coach in 66. Penn State immediately done this right here. They just went straight up. And they stayed there. They just literally stayed there.
Right at the top tier.
Right. All the way through his whole career. That's unheard of. That's really unheard of to do that. So, yeah, I mean, you can say what you want to about the man and the way it ended and say he knew or he didn't know, whatever. Listen, you got to respect him as a college football coach, right?
Exactly. Oh, very, very much so. I think everyone's opinions about his culpability with the Sandusky matter. I mean, people's minds are made up a long time ago. That's why I'm not delving into it. But we're talking strictly from a coaching standpoint. I mean, he's one of the GOATs. He's one of the greatest.
Without a doubt. Now let me talk about the changing landscape of college football for a second, because we talked about the Big Ten for a second. So in 91, I'll talk about this for a second because I wanted to bring this up a while ago. In 91, West Virginia joined the Big East along with Pitt. Penn State made application for the Big East and was denied. I don't know if you knew that, Tim, but Penn State was denied, and that's why they ended up in the Big Ten.
Wasn't this back? I believe this was back in the 80s, and I remember from watching. There was an ESPN, I think 30 for 30 documentary about the Big East basketball conference, and I think at one point they mentioned how Penn State was trying to apply to join the Big East, just like back in
right. That was back in the basketball
they were only one or two votes shy, but all the basketball only schools like Georgetown and like St. John, all of them rejected Penn State. Maybe Syracuse rejected, I forget, but like there were too many rejections for them to get allowed. They got rejected basically. Like they're saying a part of that was to do with because their basketball team just wasn't all that good.
Right. Now we can talk about where would the Big East be today, where would Penn State be today, but we don't know. So there's no need really going into that if they would have joined the Big East or been accepted. But what I want to talk about is the changing landscape of college football today. So now we've got the Big Ten. You have Oregon and Washington coming into the Big Ten. So now all of a sudden, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are not just the top three, right? Now there's a top five, and then if you throw Wisconsin in there and the occasional Michigan State and Iowa, so it's really a good, strong conference.
Yeah, and USC is jumping in, UCLA.
Right.
Granted, UCLA is probably going to be more towards the bottom half. USC remains to be seen. I think they got
to find a defense that I don't have any confidence in Lincoln Riley finding a defense. And you know what? That's what I told USC guys. Guess what? Big Ten plays defense, and they're going to hit you and hurt you. You guys better find a defense.
You better be good in the trenches too if you want to win a lot in the Big Ten too. And
that's right. You have to be. So, but Oregon and Washington are two teams that do play a little bit of defense. and have some fantastic electric offenses. Not only that, they have great NIL programs, just like USC. So now you're recruiting. Penn State's recruiting against those guys. You got
Right.
3 more, actually 4 more. You count UCLA. They got pretty good NIL too. You got 4 more programs that are coming in with some money, right? USC, Oregon, and especially Oregon. You know, they've got tons of money
I mean, we got that
coming in.
Phil Knight money probably come.
Right, you got
trickling.
that Phil Knight money. So you've got to recruit to be better than them guys, and them guys get nothing but 4 and 5 star recruits. They buy them, right? They're like Texas A&M though, because if you look at Texas A&M, they've not been able to do nothing with their 4 and 5 stars, but Oregon and Washington have. Oregon and Washington have been able to do something, you know. So I watched a show the other day that talked about where Penn State used to be number 3 in the Big Ten. You talked about Ohio State, Michigan, and then Penn State. Now they're number 5. Do you feel the same way, or how do you feel about that, Tim? I know you don't feel the same way as that, but what's your reply to that?
Well, I mean, really, maybe before 2021, you could have put Penn State as number 2 ahead of Michigan, but after losing 3 straight to them, I can't,
I agree with that.
Number 3.
I agree with that.
But that being said, number 5. I mean, okay, maybe if you put Oregon ahead of Penn State, okay, you can make a case for that. I like Oregon. I think Dan Lane's doing a tremendous job there, and I'm a little annoyed that Penn State's been on, not to digress again, but they've been on this absolute recruiting tear over the last couple of weeks. They've gotten like 7 commits. And there was another guy that was they were on track to get this guy named Brandon Finney, 4-star cornerback out of McDonough High School in the Baltimore, Maryland area, which has been a nice recruiting ground for Penn State. Oregon just swooped in like last minute, presumably with big NIL money, and he ended up choosing Oregon. So so I'm a little annoyed at that. But it's been great otherwise. But Oregon, you can make a case for being ahead of Penn State, but given that Lanning wasn't able to win the Pac-12 is 2 years ago, I would pump the brakes slightly on Oregon right now. Maybe I would put Penn State and Oregon like tied in the same. So it'd be like Ohio State, and I guess we'll give Michigan benefit of the doubt. We'll put them in number 2 though, just because they've lost so much from last year's national title team, and then tie for number 3 with Penn State, Oregon, and I'm not sure who you put in fifth. Maybe we'll say USC by default. I don't know. I'm not sure who else I would put in there. I mean, I don't know where they get fifth for Penn State. If you're saying Washington is top 5, I would strongly disagree on that. They're just in major total transition mode. I think they only have 2 returning starters from last year.
Yeah, brand new head coach.
New head coach.
Yeah, they lost. They don't have any returning starters in offense. They only have two guys returning on defense, and I think I'm sure they've grabbed some guys from the transfer portal, but including Will Rogers, the former Mississippi State quarterback, who I think he's thrown like 12,000 yards in his career. So, I mean, I'm not saying they'll be terrible, but
I agree with that.
I think they strike me as more like a 7-8 win team this year. Maybe Jed Fish, he could turn them he could get them back to where they've been the last couple of years sooner rather than later, perhaps. But I mean,
they have the facilities, they have the money, they can be at that tier. The way I look at it is, you have Ohio State's been in the lead for so long. Michigan finally made that jump where they were kind of hanging where Penn State and Wisconsin were. Once in a while, Michigan State would kind of bubble up to that and then kind of fall back down. Would you agree? Once in a while, they'd make up, and then just kind of up and
now they're currently way down.
They're now still kind of like C. They're getting C grades, but they're getting B grades before. But that's the way I look at it. Like Penn State, though, they're so close to that top tier, they just can't get over that hump. And I want to ask you, what will it take Penn State? Will it take a national championship? Because that's what it took Michigan State. Because Michigan was doing that. Michigan was kind of like Penn State, because Penn State and Michigan were kind of like neck and neck with, are we going to make that jump? When's Penn State going to make that jump? Is it with this recruiting class, you think, Tim?
Well, yeah, you mentioned NIL and all that, and depending on who Penn State's definitely they've made some strides with NIL. It's good enough where you're not going to see, for example, like you're not going to see Drew Hour or Nick Singleton or Abdul Carter get pulled away by another big time program. And I know from what I've read on from insiders and message boards, I think it was USC or some SEC program last off season threw like 7 figures in NIL at Abdul Carter to try to get him to leave Penn State. But I guess Penn State, I don't know if they're paying him 7 figures NIL, but I'm sure he's getting enough where he's satisfied. So it's not a matter of you don't have to pay them the most out of everyone else. It's just you got to make sure that you're paying them enough where the other stuff about,
Well,
I like the coaches.
I
like
secret.
what.
Tim, I know exactly what the secret is. There's only so much money, but you can't compete with the Penn State Creamery. Once you get that ice cream in that hand, they just sit there with that spoon and it figures itself out, right?
Precisely. There you go. But yeah, the NIL situation, it's good enough, but it can certainly be better. And there's still, unfortunately, the fan base, there's still a division in a way. Like especially I think part of it comes to some of the older heads of older money boosters aren't all in on James Franklin. They're frustrated with the fact he hasn't been able to get over the hump, especially with Ohio State and just and it just so they're kind of reluctant to throw a bunch of money into NIL, not realizing you need to have this, and if you want to get the best players and get over the hump against these teams, you have to be able to, throw in some money there. And I myself make a smaller donate. I'm just an average Joe fan. I'm not some rich booster, but I make a small donation to Happy Valley United, which is their NIL collective. Yeah. So it's just, but it's I think you have groups that won't do that, and then of course you also have the people who like Franklin, and but it's just there's too. It's a bit, I guess, fractured in that sense. So they're not everyone's pulling in the same direction right now. But and just I guess you could say despite that, they're doing okay. But it's going to have to be everyone's going to be pulling the same direction if we really want to start being like Ohio State or Georgia or these other big time programs that.
I asked Mike Alsty this, and I'm going to ask you. Okay, but I'm going to twist a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
So what I asked Mike is, West Virginia, you can beat Penn State and Pitt, but you don't get into the college playoff. Okay, or you don't win the Big 12. Okay. I'm asking you. You can beat Michigan and Ohio State, okay, for 2 years straight. Just beat the snot out of them. But the payoff is to pay the devil. You're not going to be competitive for the college playoffs for 3 years. Which would you rather have as a fan? Not saying you'd win a national championship, you'd get into the playoffs, but you have to lose to Ohio State and Michigan.
In the playoffs,
give me the latter scenario. It's the frustration is from the fans is because we haven't made the playoffs.
That's right. I knew you'd fight on that.
And the thing is now with a 12-team playoff, I think this is the year for Penn State to finally break through. And I've noticed a couple preview magazines like I think Athlon and 24/7 or I think it knows Bruce Feldman at the Athletic. They have Penn State in as like a 10 seed playing Ole Miss on the road, the 7 seed, which would be interesting because that would be a rematch of last year's Peach Bowl. And except this time there would probably be no opt-outs at least. So it'd be a more even kind of game. So
I am definitely 100% a Nittany Lion fan when they're playing the Ohio State and when they're playing that Big M Michigan. I love to see those teams lose. I just do. It hits me in my good feeling. It hits me.
But
Right
now
there
there again, that Shane, who at one time was a Penn State fan, and since he went to Western University, he's a Mountaineer now, which is great. Love to have him as a Mountaineer. Me as a Mountaineer fan for life, and I'm an old man. It makes a big difference to me that I hate all three of them. I hate Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. But if I had my druthers, I'd rather see Penn State lose to to Ohio State and Michigan every year.
Really?
Honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
I like to see Ohio
State.
State.
It's just that that old school mentality of back in those days, we just couldn't beat Penn State. I mean, they just beat us, every
like
year, and it got
sometimes
so old.
Frustration, I get it.
Right, that I developed a hatred. Right, I developed a hatred, but now it's a healthy hatred. I mean, that's not like I'm going to go up there and do anything stupid. It's not. It's a healthy hatred.
I won't let a kid with a Pitt hat make my sandwich. So I mean, that's different. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
You're not going to go Harvey Updike on one of our trees up there. So
no, that's sad. That was sad about that.
Right. So you talked about recruiting. So 2025 recruiting right now, since this is crossover rivalry, Penn State's number 5 in the country, West Virginia is number 20 in the country, and Pitt is number 28 in the country. So, like I say, 3 storied programs through time, and all 3 in the top 30 of recruiting for 2025 kind of shows that, right? I mean, it really does. It kind of shows that we are all 3 really good programs. Penn State obviously the best between the 3, year in and year out. But all right, so I want to talk. Go ahead, Shay.
I had a question about alternate uniforms. So there's a rumor that Penn State has an alternate uniform. Have you heard this, Tim?
You mean besides the salute to legends thing? Like there's one game a year where they do
where they do that, but no,
they have they put numbers in the helmets and they wear white shoes and
because the joke is that they're going to do high black socks instead of mid-cut black socks. That's the alternate of the alternate uniform.
I haven't heard that joke before. That's a good
high black socks, huh? All right, well, let's talk about the upcoming season for a second. So I want to get some prediction from you, Tim, on the upcoming season. I know. Let's start with Penn State's game 1, West Virginia, right? You're coming to Morgantown. Tough place to play. You ever been to Morgantown, Tim?
Nope, never been.
You're going to be able to come down this year to the game?
Unfortunately, no, I will not make it. I will actually be getting back from a vacation earlier that week. So,
well, then you don't need the vaccination. You know what the West Virginia vaccination is?
What is that?
Pepperoni rolls. You got to eat a whole. You got to get it so you can actually take a whole bag of pepperoni rolls and eat it without vomiting. Because that's like kryptonite to people from Central Pennsylvania.
I wasn't aware of that. So the pepperoni.
No, you got to try out pepperoni rolls, buddy.
Yeah. You gotta have pepperoni rolls.
Look into that.
Have you ever had
opening week? Opening week.
We're not talking about those Totino's pizza roll type things.
No.
I've never had one.
All right, Tim, text me. You got to text me your address. I just got to mail you some pepperoni rolls. Just text me your address and I'll mail you some pepperoni rolls because. Oh no!
What do you eat cardboard up in State College? Yeah, you have the Penn State Creamery, but I feel bad for you.
All right, so what's your prediction on this game, Penn State, West Virginia? Because hey, let's face it, West Virginia is going to be a pretty damn good team this year. We're returning 90% of our production from last year. We're returning 75% of our defense. This is last year's game looked lopsided, but you watched the game, Tim. It wasn't that lopsided. It was really close. What was it, 14-13 in the third quarter, late in the third quarter? So look at Shane up here. He can't wait. So tell me, Tim, how bad is Penn State going to get beat this year in Morgantown?
Well, I'll say it's going to be a tough opener, going on the road to Morgantown. But there is a reason why the odds makers have Penn State currently as an 11.5-point favorite. And the big factor there is depth. I think Penn State still has the superior depth compared to West Virginia. Like West Virginia's, they got some pretty darn good starters. And I remember last year, especially on their offense, C.J. Donaldson was a bit of a wrecking ball early on, and Garrett Green was pretty slippery with his legs. I know we had a hard time bringing him down. Their passing game was kind of meh, but Devin Carr did have a couple. I think they have a nice long catch. Ultimately though, we were able to pull away in part because of the depth. I think they just kind of wore West Virginia down on the lines and just were able to just throw more bodies at them than West Virginia was capable of keeping up with. And so I think what could either make this a nerve-wracking game for 4 quarters or a more comfortable than expected Penn State win is just, can West Virginia come out and can they draw first blood? Can they get that early touchdown, get up 7-0, get the crowd fired up, or get that big turnover, whatever. Can they come with some big plays early on, get some points early, put a little more pressure on Penn State? That's what I'm going to be looking for. I think Penn State might have to weather a storm to start out with. And, depending on how they do that, they're either going to be it's either going to be a tight one for 4 quarters or, maybe they end up winning reasonably comfortably.
So let me ask you a question. Because I heard your key to the game. I agree with your key and your assessment of the game there. But my question is, can Drew Aller put together a game? Because he's gonna really need to. Drew Aller is gonna have to be the quarterback that people expect him to be in this game. I think that's the burning question right now.
I think that's a good point. Well, he did throw for over 300 yards last year against West Virginia, so keep that in mind.
Right.
I think the other big thing, I'm sure maybe you noticed since you follow college football, but Penn State hired away Kansas's offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki this past offseason, and Andy Kotelnicki is no stranger to that West Virginia defense. He's schemed against them the last 3 years. So, and now he's got, much more talented guys to work with than he ever did at Kansas. So I think, and now he also got a couple, he's got a, talented quarterback in Drew Aller. You got a pair of stud running backs in Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, got some nice tight ends led by Tyler Warren. There's some potential in the receiving group, although they got to prove themselves. But Kotelnicki is a guy. He's a very creative guy. I've watched videos on him, and it does a lot of motion, a lot of disguising. And I think he knows, and he's done this with more Drew Aller type drop back pass quarterbacks, and more like dual threat like Jalen Daniels at Kansas. And so he's a guy who can adapt his offense to whatever personnel he's working with. Like he's just a guy who you give him the ingredients, like I said, you give him the ingredients, he'll just make the best, tastiest dish he possibly can with those ingredients. And so, I have a reasonable amount of confidence that Penn State's offense can put up some points. What I'm curious to see is how does the defense handle West Virginia's offense? I think that's West Virginia's biggest strength, if you ask me, because of who they return. Garrett Green's got a full year under his belt now as a starter. He was, I guess, pun sort of intended, very green when he came to Happy Valley a year ago. And he held his own, but, it was definitely a bit overmatched. But, this year he's more comfortable, and, we have Penn State has a new defensive coordinator in Tom Allen, with Manny Diaz having taken the Duke job. And I'm very confident in Allen and the defense too, and I'm sure they'll be great. But I'm curious to see if how quickly they're able to adjust to West Virginia's offense, and I'm curious to see. I think the key the key for West Virginia is they're going to have to be able to throw it too. I mean, we just saw last year, it wasn't enough to just be able to run the ball. I mean, they had some success with it, but eventually you got to be able to take some downfield shots and, move the chains that way. So
And I know Garrett Green's been working on that passing game the whole off season. That's pretty much what they've worked on, that passing game. So I think we'll see a different Garrett Green than we've seen last year. But here's my thought on this game. Every time I look at this game on paper and I see your running backs and I see our running backs and I see your offensive line and I see our offensive line, all I can think of is, my God, Penn State's going to have 300 yards. West Virginia's going to have 300 yards on the ground. Both of them going to have 300 yards on the ground. I can just see that happening. This is going to turn into a slugfest of running backs. Because I think we're going to see 4 elite running backs in this game that are just really, really good. That's how I feel about it.
I could see both teams having success on the ground in this one.
Yeah.
Who's going to score last? But I have a question.
So you're taking a Penn State victory, and I would expect you to, obviously. But let's look ahead for Penn State here just a minute. How about October 12th? You guys are traveling out to play USC October 12th.
Yeah.
Now you got to go out and face Lincoln Riley offense. That, my goodness gracious! I mean, there's not a better offense in the country than Lincoln Riley offense, basically. But they don't have a defense. So, can you outscore them? That would be my question. Could you outscore USC? That's going to be the question of that game. It's not going to be whether or not you can stop USC, because I don't think anybody could really stop USC if they wanted, when they're trying to score. And obviously they're going to be trying to score.
I will say this about USC though. I mean, obviously, this is a team that went 8-5 last year, despite having the current #1 draft pick in the NFL and Caleb Williams, quarterback in that team. And yes, having a poor defense is part of that, but also they were not very good in the trenches on either side of the ball. Caleb Williams was definitely doing a lot of running for his life especially against the better defenses on the schedule. But I think the reason why Penn State's favored in part is because I think they match up well in the trenches. And also, USC's defense, I'll believe it when I see it that they are actually going to be good on defense. And
it's atrocious. Their defense is atrocious. Oklahoma's defense was atrocious, and he took him with him. Lincoln Riley took the defensive coordinator with him to USC. Now he's not there no more, so we'll see if there's
they have former Penn State safety Danton Lynn as their defensive coordinator now. They have swiped him from crosstown rival UCLA, so I'm sure they'll be improved. Partly higher, and also just I guess by virtue of how can they get any worse? But there's still a lot of work to be done, and I guess from my understanding, they didn't really get anybody from the transfer portal, to fill in some of the gaps on the defense side of the ball. So I don't know. I feel like there's opportunity there for Penn State to just kind of run it down their throats, and and of course, Auer can sling it some too. I guess the big question is how will the defense handle that offense? And and I think our D-line, especially with our combination of Denai Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter, who was converted from linebacker to defensive end this offseason, I think combination of those two, who I think they could potentially wreak havoc on USC and have whoever is Miller Moss or whoever's quarterback in them running for their lives. So, we'll see. It's a cross country trip, which gives me some pause because that's you never know. We haven't really done this during the middle of a season before. It's only like a bowl game we've done this, and yes, I really do want Penn State to win this time because I've been to the last 2 Rose Bowls. We lost to USC. I'm sick and tired of losing to USC. I want to beat these guys. And
I'll let you know. West Virginia's been doing these cross country trips now for 10, 12 years, and they're not easy. They're just not easy to do.
I attribute 1 loss a year to travel for maybe more for basketball, but definitely for football, at least one. because
Yep.
I'm going out west for work, this month for a week, and it knocks you out for at least 48 hours until you kind of get right. But
So Steven's asking, tell me where West Virginia got a position advantage against Penn State. I'm not going to say they got a position advantage, but I think they've got equal starters on offense, on both offenses. I think there's equal starters, and I think West Virginia might have a slight edge at quarterback, just to be honest with you. I think West Virginia's got a slight edge at quarterback because Garrett Green is so mobile and gets back there, and you don't know what he's going to do. Is he going to throw it? Is he going to run it? And if he takes off running, he can burn your ass. So that's where I think West Virginia's got a slight advantage is quarterback. And what do we say? Quarterback's the most important position on the field, right? So I think that's where West Virginia might have a slight advantage, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Well, I think being the first game is the outlier. You got new coaching staff, you got kids and coaches never been down to Morgantown, a little bit new environment. The whole season's going to be like that because they have to go to USC, they have to go to Morgantown. It's not your standard season. They did face West Virginia last year, so that's a check mark in favor for Penn State. But I think it's definitely one, if I was a Penn State fan, I would have highlighted with the Sharpie, because it's not one you want to overlook. And here's the punch in the eye. If Penn State loses that first game, it's going to be hard to get traction through the season, because it's a no-win scenario for them. If Penn State wins big, it's, oh well, we thought they would win big. If you lose, then oh well, here we go.
So let me ask Tim. Let me ask you that, Tim. Will the West Virginia game dictate your season?
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, you want to get that win. You want to start 1-0, be 1-0 for the week, as James Franklin likes to say, or 1-0 to start the season. You definitely don't want to put yourself in an 0-1 hole. If I know they don't have, after that they have Bowling Green and Kent State and Illinois, but I mean, you don't want to be going into. Ideally, I mean, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking they go into Los Angeles undefeated, and that would include getting a win at West Virginia. So yeah, if they get upset by West Virginia, that definitely throws a wrench in the plans for making the playoff. I mean, suddenly they gotta be almost perfect. I mean, I'm factoring in a loss to Ohio State because I'm in all believe when I see it mode at this point. But
I'm looking at your schedule here. You've got a tough schedule. All right, so you're going on the road to West Virginia. Not an easy game. I don't care what season it is. Going to Morgantown is not an easy game. So then you're going on the road to USC. You're going on the road to Wisconsin. You're going on the road to Purdue, on the road to Minnesota. You've got some tough road games in there, but you've also got a few interesting home games too, right? So if I look at it like Ohio State is coming to your house, Washington is coming to your house, Maryland is coming to your house. Maryland's kind of a surprise team for me. They, last year they were pretty daggone good. I expect them to do a little bit better this year. I still don't expect them to beat Penn State, but I expect them to be even better. So I think Maryland's on an upswing, but that Ohio State and Washington coming to your house November 2nd is Ohio State, November 9th, Washington, 2 back-to-back games that could be top 10 games, right? I mean, we don't know what Washington's going to have, right? We don't know at this point what Washington's going to have.
I don't think
stuff, but
I'd be very surprised if Washington's a battle between top 10 teams. Again, I think Washington's in a transition year. I think they're like a 7-8 win type team right now. They have a lot they got to prove.
Right, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
They're decimated right now.
But let's just say the transition goes really smooth.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, they get 4 and 5 star talent up there, right? And these players have been on this team for a while. They've learned, they know, they're built, they're up with the program. So it's not like he's going into an empty cupboard, right? It might have a new coaching staff, but it's not an empty cupboard in Washington by any means.
It could be a hangover game for Penn State. They're coming off of an emotional win against Ohio State.
Yeah, I could see that being a trap game, right?
Well,
That
Shane, you said what I was going to say. The only thing that gives me pause about that game, like I think Penn State wins. I think they should. I think they will cover whatever the spread ends up being. But one thing that gives me pause is it's the week after Ohio State. Win or lose, that's a game that Penn State's going to put their heart and soul into. So,
Yeah.
how do they come out against Washington the following week? I remember last season after we lost to Ohio State on road, we come back home to Indiana, lowly Indiana. We're a 32.5-point favorite. And
Yep.
well, guess what? I mean, Indiana takes us right down to the wire. We needed some Drew Hour to Keandre Lambert Smith type heroics to avoid the upset. So, that's definitely something that gives me a little bit of pause. But you just going back to the road games you mentioned. I mean, yeah, we talked about USC, Wisconsin. That'll be tough too. I mean, it's always tough to play in Camp Randall. They always give us a hard time, but I will say this: Penn State has won the last 5 meetings in a row against Wisconsin. The last time Wisconsin beat Penn State was in 2011, and that was when they had Russell Wilson quarterbacking them, and that was also when Penn State they were reeling. At that point, Joe had been fired. The team was kind of in chaos. So
right, yeah.
And so they ended up destroying Penn State then, but Penn State's beaten them the last 5 meetings in a row. So the current Wisconsin players, they were all in elementary school last time Wisconsin beat Penn State. So at this point, I mean, it's like I'll give benefit of the doubt to the Nittany Lions. I'm not, I'm not saying it's going to be an easy game. It won't be. That'll be it's always a tough time playing in Camp Randall. And I would imagine maybe NBC gets that for their Big Ten Saturday night game too. Yeah. So could be extra raucous there. And so that'll be tough. But I think Penn State still is kind of like West Virginia. I think their depth is just superior right now to Wisconsin's. And I think Luke Fickell's a fine coach, and I think he's going to, have that program in a good place in another year or two. But, they're still very much still building into his type of a program. And when they've been one way, like a ground and pound type team, like from the Barry Alvarez days, their whole time, it's not an overnight transition. So I think Penn State wins that. You mentioned Minnesota, Purdue. Purdue, they're kind. We'll see. I don't. Maybe I'm sure they can push for a bowl game, but they're not a team that concerns me too much. It's just more. It's just does Penn State stay focused? Do they stay? Do they just put them away before halftime, or is it a game where maybe they come out?
I tell you how I would judge the Purdue versus Penn State matchup is about the same as I would judge West Virginia versus Kansas. Right? It's like we should beat them. We should every year. We should beat Kansas, but there's always that occasion when they can pop up and surprise you, right? So, and you kind of worry about going into that game always. So,
I mean, I'm not saying that it can't happen. But I mean, I would like our chance against Purdue and Minnesota too. I think they're both. I don't think this Minnesota. I know last time we went to Minnesota in 2019, they beat us, but I don't think this year's iteration of Minnesota. I don't see a Rashad Bateman type guy on their team who's gonna burn Penn State's secondary.
So I'll tell you tonight we have the Penn State view. Next week we'll have the Pitt view, just like we did the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
we have a crossover rivalries: Penn State, West Virginia, Pitt, West Virginia, Penn State, Pitt. All crossover rivalries. Even though Penn State says they are unrivaled, believe me, this game goes back a long way between West Virginia and Penn State. Many of you maybe don't remember it. I do very, very plainly remember that it was some good games, some really good games, interesting games to watch, especially when they were both independents, and things. So Anyway, I hope everybody can tune in with us next week for that viewing. Tim, will you tell everybody exactly where to find you at and how to get to you and watch you and read your writing?
Yes, blackshoediaries.com. It's part of the SB Nation platform, but it's not just me. It's like got about a dozen other colleagues who help contribute to our wonderful coverage of Penn State sports, not just football, but basketball, wrestling, hockey. So throughout the year, check us out. You can find us on Twitter, X, whatever they call it these days, at BSD Tweet. And of course, you want to follow me, my my account on there. It's at Happy Hour Valley on the Twitter X platform. But yes, blackshoediaries.com. That's your go-to site. And I guess just to plug, my colleague at BSD, Patrick Kerbler, and I host the Penn State post-game shows during the season here on the Voice of College Football right after every game ends. So be sure to check us out there too. I'm going to try and maybe do a lengthy season preview sometime in August. So be on the lookout for that.
You know what would be interesting, win or lose. We ought to do a post game Penn State West Virginia game, all of us together.
I would absolutely be down for that.
Yeah, win or lose. So we'll do that. Let's just plan on doing that. We'll just share it on both platforms, Penn State, West Virginia, and we'll do a post game Penn State West Virginia game this year. So that should be a lot of fun. So
yeah.
All right, Shane, you got anything else for us tonight, man?
I don't, but tune in tomorrow and I might have some recruiting news. We'll go through the week in review on what West Virginia's been up to, and it's been another unexpectedly pleasant recruiting week for West Virginia. They got a 4-star quarterback, so we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yep. All right, well, Tim, I appreciate you being here. Everyone in the chat, we appreciate you being here with us. Everyone, have a great night, and let's go watch the debate, guys, and see what kind of antics we can watch and what can happen. We all need to laugh every once in a while, right?
Yeah.